Hello cars and bids, and welcome to a video I'm especially excited about. A lot of you have been asking me over DMs and over the podcast about the Murciélago conversion kit. So rather than just give you a couple sound bites, we're going to go deep into what it took to convert this to a manual transmission, what the driving experience is like now that we're 700 or 800 miles out from that conversion, how it's holding up, what I think it'll do for the market, and anything else you might want to know, and probably some things you don't, about swapping a Murciélago. So tune in and buckle up. This is going to be a fun experience for everyone. And before we get started, the folks at Machina Motorworks who converted this car have a Ferrari 599 manual conversion live now on the site. That's an Enzo-derived V12 with a click-clack 6-speed transmission conversion. Nothing gets better than that. And having trusted them with my own car, I can tell you that these guys do top-notch work. So after this video, pop on over to Cars and Bids using the link below and check out the listing and place a bid if you're so inclined. And before we hop in for a ride, just to give you a quick look at what you can tell visually on a swap car, you've got the shift knob right here. I elected to go with the polished chrome look. The factory is more brushed. You can do either. There's different heights you can do as well. So this one is not quite as tall as factory, but gives you a nice short throw, which I really like. You obviously get the 3 pedals there. There's a 580 version for the pre-facelift and a 640 version for the post-facelift. The reverse button goes away. It's now blank. Then they are going to be setting me covers here for where the paddles used to be, but obviously the paddles are removed. So visually, it looks just like a OE car. There's little details, if you really look for it, that you could completely convert. But for me, as a driver, I love the chrome. It's a little bling bling. I think it fits the personality of a Murci really, really well. This centerpiece right here does get refinished. Machina uses a company called MA Carbon to do it, and they'll match the weave or do whatever carbon interior you have, but this hole comes out. There is a hole that they drill. They'll send you pictures of that, which is the only non-reversible part of this, but you've got to do that. So it's basically an oval shape is how they do it from the factory. So it doesn't really compromise the structure, but that is the scariest part, I would say, of the whole operation. It's crazy that, and the car's gone like 3 weeks. Oh, there it goes. I am so nervous and so excited at the same time, but this car will be coming back in about a month with a 6-speed manual. Let's rewind back a little bit before we get too carried away about how awesome the swap is and talk about e-gear experience and a Murciélago experience in general. I bought this car almost 3 years ago, and I bought it as an e-gear, obviously. Mostly because the manuals, even at that time, were too expensive and I could barely afford the e-gear. But I also figured, how bad could it really be? And I'd say the first year of driving it, I really was like pro e-gear. Like anyone that asked me, I would say, hey, it's way better than you think. Jeremy Clarkson and his whole floppy paddles argument was way overhyped. Yes, I would prefer manual, but e-gear has a lot of drama. You can take it on drives and it lurches you back every time you shift. And it has some, like on the track, it was actually pretty good not to have to like think with your feet and like move a bunch of things. So I also wondered for the collectors, the younger collectors that are now coming of age, many of them can't drive manuals or haven't driven manuals. Maybe they will one day prefer automatics because that will be an easier ownership experience for them. So for a lot of reasons, I was like, hey, e-gear's not so bad. People hate on it too much. I would prefer manual, all things equal, but I'm happy with e-gear. What I found over time was that the drawbacks of e-gear became more and more annoying, and the lust for a manual became stronger and stronger, to the point where I was ready to sell this car and move into a Diablo because I wanted a manual so badly and I was so tired of the e-gear. I was no longer driving the car if I thought there was going to be traffic. I was no longer parallel parking the car or backing it up. I was having to go into Google Maps and make sure that wherever I was going was going to be e-gear friendly and the car wouldn't lurch. So I'm not complaining about a Murciélago. It's an amazing experience. But for me, after about 2 years of e-gear, I'd sort of had my fun with the e-gear experience, and I thought it's time to move on and find a manual. And right about then was when the the spirits aligned and the world came together and said, Nick, we love you. Here is your gift from the universe. And it was manual conversions. And finally, after years of R&D across multiple companies, somehow they had cracked the code to figure out how the TCU and the ECU and everything could play together nicely so that you could have a seamless manual conversion experience. Previously, that had only been available for Ferraris, the Aston Martin Vanquish, a handful of cars. For whatever reason, Lambo was too hard to figure out. But a few folks, largely in Texas and in Europe, had figured this out, made it commercially available. I waited till a handful of cars were done, but I wanted to swap as soon as I could because it was either swap or sell. And as you'll see in the rest of this video, I think I made the right choice. Delivery day. I don't remember that old piece of crap E-Gear car. This is nothing like it, man. All right, the first drive is over. That was incredible. It makes the car so much more fun. I mean, I know that's cliche. Obviously, a manual is more fun than an automatic, but wow, what a difference. And they were able to do that major of a transformation in like, oh, hold on. Gotta enjoy that. That, you know, like otherwise, if you were to buy it, would be hundreds of thousands of dollars of a difference. And like they could just, like they actually had the whole thing done in like a week and a half. And then it was just sort of like finishing touches and QA testing and all that. So it's crazy to think like how much more people will pay to have a factory do it, or just because it's rare and you can accomplish the same thing so much cheaper and easier. I totally get like for the original folks that want a low mile, pristine example, this will never be an OE manual, but to even accomplish 80% of that for 20% of the cost is like such a no-brainer from an enthusiast perspective. So I'm thrilled at it, and sure, put money aside, I like cars that you can drive, right? So this one, in the Murci world, having 19,000 miles is high mileage, or at least mid mileage, and so I could just keep driving it. And a car that's worth $1 million or even half that, you're going to worry about putting more miles on it, you're going to worry about wear and tear, you're going to just get very like particular about the car. And then I can just drive this car for a fraction of that cost and throw the keys to my buddies and, you know, take it in stop and go traffic and not really care it's junk miles or it's not a special occasion to warrant the car, that kind of BS. So I just like, I mean, I've really tried to drive this thing as much and as hard as I can since getting it back, in part because I wanted to try to break it and see if there's any weak points or things that they missed or what have you. And I figure the earlier you catch it, the better. But I mean, I got it 18,300 is what they got it at. It's at 19,043, 1950, let's call it. So 750 miles basically. And I haven't been able to break it yet. And I don't think that's something you would be thinking about in an OE Murci is, oh, I want to try to break the car, or I want to try to put as many miles on it as I humanly can. So it's so cool to have that freedom and ability. It's hard to summarize just how much different the car is having gotten it back. Everything from your daily driving and going in reverse up and down the driveway and in stop and go traffic to just ripping it on the canyons and up hills and everything in between. It's also kind of funny to me, not why I did it, but at Cars and Coffee, everyone kind of does one of these. And I now get the approving nod instead of the disapproving one of those. So from just the feels, the looks, and I think it will also impact the resale value really positively. No one's sold a converted Murciélago, but if you look at the Ferrari market, like that 599 I mentioned before, they do tend to bring a premium, usually recouping what you spend on the conversion, often a little bit on top. So we'll see how that car does, and we'll see if anyone does sell their Murci. But for me personally, I'm so happy. I can't imagine selling it now that it's swapped. It really fixed every complaint I had, made it feel like a new car all over again. So this one is a keeper in the garage. The Bentley, we'll see. You'll have to tune in for that. But it certainly made this car right in the world, in my opinion. And anyone that has an E-Gear, an F1, any of the early 2000s single clutch automated manuals really ought to consider a swap if you drive it a lot. It does really add a ton of the dynamics to it. So thanks for watching all of that. If you're interested in getting a manual swap, feel free to ask me questions in the comments there. It is a scary process. It is expensive. It does take time, but absolutely worth it, as all good things in life do. So thanks for checking it out, and subscribe for more on carsandbits.com.